Welcome to Pennsylvania Newsmakers, and as always, thanks for watching. Well, the folks from the Pennsylvania Credit Union Association are in the house. Big jump and increase in identity theft. Plus, are you getting ready to file your taxes? We're going to give you some help on that. But first, Dave Taylor is here. What a bunch of topics we have. We're going to talk about the steel tariff. We're going to talk about the culture in the Capitol. And of course, it's heading to spring, and there's something called the Pennsylvania budget. We'll get into all of that after these words.
This is Pennsylvania Newsmakers, a fast-paced, unrehearsed weekly discussion with and about the leaders who shape your world. And now, here's your host, Terry Madonna.
Well, David Taylor is with me. He's sitting across from me. He's the president of Pennsylvania Manufacturers Association. He's normally on with Gene Barr. Gene's unavailable, but we're going to get Gene on at some point very soon. Of course, Gene's with the Pennsylvania Chamber, and we'll take care of that shortly. But David, I got to start with the controversy over President Trump's proposal to raise the tariff on steel 25%, aluminum 10%. It has created an incredible disjuncture, if I can, you know what I mean, where people you would think would be for it aren't, people against it. So what's your sense about it?
Well, this is a very important step that the administration is taking. It is long overdue. The fact is that the domestic steel producers have been under tremendous competitive pressure from unfair and illegal practices from other countries, especially from China. And Terry, to put it in perspective, the amount of overcapacity of steel production in China, which is to say the amount of steel that's being made that is above the ability of the Chinese economy to consume domestically, that oversupply is actually greater in amount than total domestic steel production in the United States. Right. And so this is why even though the U.S. doesn't import that much steel directly from China, Chinese overproduction and overcapacity is artificially depressing prices globally, and that's why this correction needs to be put in place. And it amuses me that you have people who say that they're for free markets and free enterprise, who would let this critical industry just shrivel and die because of the non-market command and control decisions made by a hostile foreign government. And also, Terry, it's important to remember that it was just in the very recent past that the Obama Justice Department brought charges against members of Chinese military intelligence for a cyber attack against the steel industry in Pittsburgh.
So free trade has not turned out to be fair trade.
Well, I mean,
that's
very much so. And this is the thing to understand, Terry, that free trade is very much like world peace, in that it is a noble abstraction that we all strive to work towards. And yet, at the same time, all of us have to live in the real world. And remember also that steel is not a commodity like wheat or timber, that it requires billions of dollars of infrastructure, and that when that capacity, when those steel mills, if those furnaces go cold, they warp, and essentially it's a death sentence for that facility.
Yeah, I mean, what's interesting, if you follow the debate in Congress, and I know that you do, you've got Democrats and Republicans who aren't in favor of it. Senator Toomey seems to now have modified his position a bit. He first was not wild about it, and then he said, we must go slowly. I think maybe the word he used is cautiously. And then Senator Casey, of course, is for it, as are a number of the unions and, of course, the workers obviously in favor of it, and a number of businesses, too.
Well, I mean, steel and industrial metals are foundational to the rest of our manufacturing economy. And yes, there's going to be a period of adjustment where that particular cost input is going to rise just because it's been artificially depressed. And so the rise in prices after the imposition of the tariffs will just be, getting up to the cost of production. That dumping is when a product or a commodity is taken at a price below the cost of production and sold into somebody else's market for the purpose of destroying that industry.
One other point. I mean, now I'm hearing the argument that, okay, maybe when we do these tariffs and how we deal with various countries, that it should be more targeted. You get my point.
Yeah.
But Canada apparently, what is it, almost 20% of imported steel we get from Canada, but yet they don't seem to be a violator in the same way. Go ahead.
I mean, and I would recognize that Canada is distinctly different. That there's a great degree of integration between the Canadian and American economies, and so this, I think, is a relevant issue for the modernization negotiations for NAFTA, and an exemption should be made.
I noticed that Hershey, right here in South Central Pennsylvania, uses steel for its production plants and aluminum for wrapping its chocolate kisses and miniature Reese's peanut butter cups. So Hershey Food, I mean, there are places that use this that you wouldn't even think, right?
And this is all in the manufacturing sector. So these are all of our friends and allies and members and customers.
And we couldn't even begin, I mean, when you think about it, when I read this report about Hershey, I'm thinking, how many other manufacturers, companies, in all kinds of areas of the economy does this affect that we wouldn't even think of, right?
Yeah, of course. But the thing is that it's critically important for America to retain our industrial metals manufacturing capacity. And so, all of the cost inputs that manufacturers have, they need to be based on, competitive market pricing, and that the decisions by foreign governments to subsidize this industry has rendered those price inputs artificially low.
All right, we're going to run to a break. When we come back, I want to talk about another important subject. It looks like now, if I'm right on my math, 4 Pennsylvania state lawmakers have been involved in some kind of sexual harassment allegation, from very serious to, they're all serious, but in degrees. And I want you to weigh in on this. You've been also quoted as you apparently have very strong feelings about the culture, and it's an important subject, and we'll let you weigh in after these words.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by the Pennsylvania Chamber of Business and Industry, the statewide voice of business, and by the Pennsylvania State Education Association and Partners for Public Education, bringing the power of a great education to our schools, our students, and our communities. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by the Pennsylvania Highway Information Association, the go-to source to learn about transportation projects and issues. Please visit pahighwayinfo.org. And by the Pennsylvania Manufacturers Association. Business in Pennsylvania is our business.
Well, I'm chatting with Dave Taylor. We're going to turn now. He's the head of the Pennsylvania Manufacturers Association. David, let's turn to a subject that you've been quoted on, and that is, extremely important. A House member from Delaware County named Miccarelli has, 2 women have accused him not of patting their rumps. That's serious, don't get me wrong, but actually of assault. And you've spoken out about this culture in Harrisburg. You're in the state capitol a good bit. You interact. What's the situation, and what can be done about it?
Well, I mean, obviously there are things that are seriously wrong. That the chauvinism runs deep in the under the Capitol Dome community, and the fact that the taxpayers are only now finding out that that settlement payments have been made in secret for cases of abuse and harassment.
Taxpayer money.
Yes, and and also obviously the very serious situation that you made mention of, where you have a sitting lawmaker who is credibly accused of rape and making deadly threats while brandishing a firearm, and that and to their credit, that the leaders of the House Republican caucus have said that member should resign.
And the Democrats.
Yes, but here's also the thing. We need to have universal standards. That the worst thing that could happen would be that this would become weaponized as a political issue. And while Governor Wolf has called for the resignation of each of these legislators in turn, Democrat or Republican, let's note that it was only a year and a half ago that he stood on the stage in Philadelphia on election night, right next to America's most notorious sexual predator, Bill Clinton. So, again, we need to have...
You want consistency, and we can't pick and choose based on party or ideology.
Well,
that's your point.
and that's exactly right. And that we need our leaders to, to stand for what's honorable and right. And that, again, there's a serious problem at the Capitol, and hopefully the action in this most notorious case will help to change that culture.
Okay, before I let you go, I mean, there's hearings are going on this on the state budget. Governor Wolf has proposed an increase that would about $1 billion more in spending. Let's be honest, Republicans aren't exactly wowed about it. I don't think there's going to be big, huge changes in the budget itself from the current one. No broad-based tax. Governor wants a shale tax again. What are you hearing about that? They all want to get it done on time because of the campaigns for the state House and state Senate, and a guy named Governor Wolf is on the ballot this year.
Right.
What's your sense about the
Well, I mean, the
budget?
business community is concerned about a number of the things that are that the governor's budget is predicated on. That there are several business tax increases. The new additional higher tax on energy production is one of them, but also that there was a rules change made by the Department of Revenue by the Wolf administration, disallowing benefits from the Federal Tax Cuts and Jobs Act from flowing through the state tax structure, and even worse when it comes to the bonus depreciation, which is the federal change to encourage manufacturers and other employers to invest in new equipment and machinery, that the Governor Wolf has changed the rules to say that those benefits, not only are you not going to get the added benefit through the recent change, but he's going to disallow depreciation until the asset is sold or decommissioned, and that's a terrible change. We're the only state in the country looking to do this, and that has to be fixed.
Back on the shale tax, Governor Wolf has proposed the shale tax from the campaign that he first ran in 2014. He's put that in every budget. The legislature has been reluctant to do it. I don't see any change this year. Do you?
Well, no, I don't. But the problem is that every time that the governor hammers on this point, it renders Pennsylvania's investment environment uncertain. So if you are a national business or a national investor to say, well, is Pennsylvania going to have this particular set of costs for producing here, or is that going to go up? You go and say, well, it's just as easy for me to put my money in Texas where I know what I'm getting.
For our viewers out there, let's just go. So I don't expect, and you tell me what you think, broad-based tax hikes, sales or income tax, completely off the table.
It would seem. It would seem. If
any area of state government does reasonably well, I'll put it that way, it's likely to be education again. Are you
there's
on board
always
with that?
there's always a political impulse to plus up Pennsylvania's very high spending number. We are one of the top spenders in the country in terms of per pupil expenditures in public K through 12.
Okay. So what other areas would you see might be increased in the budget? Remember, he asked for $1 billion more, and I don't think the legislature is going to give him that kind of a
Right.
increase.
I know that there is a bipartisan consensus on addressing, things like school safety, things like the, coping with the opioid crisis, which is epidemic in Pennsylvania.
Absolutely.
So, on the margins, I would expect any number of specific categories to see funding increases.
All right. Well, look, I want to thank you for coming in, particularly this important steel. Every topic was important, but the steel tariff and what it means to the economy of the state and to the jobs, particularly in a couple parts of it. Well, actually, it could go through the entire economy. Thanks for coming in. All right, coming up, we're going to get into identity theft. It's increased, and if you haven't filed, even if you have filed your income tax this year, we're going to provide you some help. We'll do that in a moment.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by the Pennsylvania Credit Union Association. Pennsylvania Credit Unions, where people are worth more than money. To find a credit union that is right for you, check out ibelong.org. And by the Energy Association of Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania's energy information source. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by the Association of Pennsylvania State College and University Faculties. representing the faculty and coaches who are devoted to providing quality public higher education for Pennsylvania's college students.
Welcome back. Well, our friends from the Pennsylvania Credit Union Association are here. We got a couple of important topics to talk about. Let me start first of all with Deb Kauffman. She's the CEO of the White Rose Credit Union, and Mike Wishnow. He's on the show quite frequently. He's the Senior Vice President with the Credit Union Association. All right, Michael, I want to start with you. Of late, and I know it's probably just more anecdotal and personal, I've been talking with more and more people who are, and I'm going to use the right word, you correct me if I'm wrong, the victim of identity theft. It's like it's mushrooming completely out of control.
Yeah, certainly data breaches continue to escalate year after year after year. The big one this year was the Equifax data breach. They just released it. It's 2.4 million more people's data were breached. What happens is this data gets sold on what's called the dark web.
Right.
And these thieves deal in it. They steal your identity. We're going to talk a little bit about taxes. One of the things they can do is file a tax return and steal your tax refund.
Wow.
So
Deb, you obviously have folks who come in to see you. They have their identity. I mean, what do you tell them? What should they do? Tell our viewers, what should people do?
One of the main things that we ask them to do is to continually check their accounts. If they have the online options to check it online, you can check it anywhere you're at. Other things is
check your credit union account, your bank account, your credit cards, because people can obviously do that.
That not only helps with the identity theft, but also if the skimmers on the tanks, for when you get gas. So everything is to verify it's your transactions in your accounts. As well as you can go to the credit bureaus and get your free credit reports. You might not always get your score, but you can at least verify what transactions are on your credit report and make sure that they're all your debts.
That's a great point. Now, what kind of protection? I mean, you hear these ads all the time for people who say, join us, buy your membership to us, and we'll provide you with immediate protection and clean it all up. Plus, there's a compensation at the end of the day if you get,
there are a number of protection mechanisms out there.
Right.
If you're talking about credit cards, if you report it, you're only liable, with Visa and Master, it could be up to $50. Visa and MasterCard, it's zero liability.
Wow.
So but you still have the headache of cleaning it up.
Yeah.
The other option is there are identity theft protection services out there.
Right.
LifeLock is probably the most well-known one.
And every other minute there's a commercial one.
We have Sherpa, which is offered through the credit union space, but it's basically the same program. What it does is it monitors your credit. If it sees something out of line, it lets you know. It gives you a monthly report. And if something were to happen, they'll stand with you, clean it up, and as you said, it has insurance up to $1 million for any losses.
All right, we're going to run to a break. I want to come back and talk about something called VITA tax preparation. That's VITA. We'll do that in a moment.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by the Pennsylvania Medical Society. Inspired physicians committed to the good health of Pennsylvanians and the advancement of the practice of medicine. And by the Pennsylvania Healthcare Association, the future of long-term care.
All right, Deb Kauffman, let's talk about VITA, otherwise known as VITA. What is it, and why should people care about it? How about that?
Okay, it's volunteer income tax preparations for those that are making about $54,000 or less for family households that a lot of the people that come to get this program done, they don't take all the credits that they really could, such as the earned income tax credit, the child credit, as well as the elderly or disabled. So this is a program that is run by the IRS, and it is run at approximately, I believe, 14,000 sites over the United States.
So 14,000 places folks can go to, but Michael, how do they get how do you even know where to go, and how do you get
You can
linked
certainly
into
go to
it?
the IRS's website, plug in your zip code. It'll tell you all the folks that do it. Many credit unions, including Deb's, are a site where you can go get your taxes prepared for free if you fit the income guidelines. And these professionals are trained to make sure that every dollar you can get on your taxes, you claim. Because believe it or not, there's millions of dollars left on the table from people who don't know that they can claim these credits. And these are folks that frankly need that money.
So we're talking here about first of all, what's the earned income tax credit, either one of you? What is that?
Well,
I mean, I think I know what it is, but help our...
Okay, that's mainly if you're, depends on your income as to how much money you can get back based on what you do or don't make. So that automatically comes into that effect.
All right, and as Michael, you point out, millions of dollars are left on the table because people don't have enough, you know, obviously the average person, and I fall into that category, I don't even do my income tax, my wife does it, and I show up and sign at the end of the day. I mean, it's way, I used to do it, it's well above my ability, I think, to understand it. But the fact of the matter is that this is extremely important. And so you could probably just call, you could go to a credit union in your area, pick up the phone and dial, and they could help you, right?
Probably. If they don't do it themselves, credit unions are oftentimes aligned with folks in the community. One of the big groups that does it, believe it or not, is AARP, because there are a lot of seniors that qualify for this earned income tax credit that don't take it.
I got it.
But yeah, probably the easiest way is just to go online. And see what's close to you and what hours work and all that kind of stuff. Okay,
now how does it work in your operation?
Well, with our operation,
and I presume, I don't want to interrupt, but I presume that most other operations that provide the same service, it would be familiar. It would all be very similar.
Yes, it's fairly similar. What we do is we actually, in York County, you have to call, which is the Spirit Trust, and they're the ones that head the entire program up for the York County. So you contact them and you give them an idea of where you're closest to, and they'll find a location for you. Or we have a lot of our members that call and just say, I want to be at White Rose, and they set up the appointments for us then. So we have a certain time frame and a certain day for our staff to do the VITA programs at different locations.
Okay. Now, Mike, before I let you go, we're almost out of time. What's your sense, because you're intimately involved in all this, in general of the economy of our state? Looks like more people are working, unemployment. Are you seeing generally when you get reports from the various credit unions?
I think consumer confidence is up. Of course, interest rates are slowly rising, which is probably a good thing for the economy, and inflation's low.
Very good. Thanks. We'll see you next month for another update. All right. Thanks for watching Pennsylvania Newsmakers, and as always, you stay well.